It is exactly 38 minutes past the hour. We thank you for staying with us right here on the Daily Report. As is the norm every Tuesday, we bring you the People's Court. And tonight, we shine a spotlight on the state of learning. Back to school, official reopening date was yesterday, Monday, the 13th. Today, reports have come in of a slow back to school situation that we've been able to see and experience. And tonight we delve into this whole education sector. Remember, it has fallen victim to various calamities in the past, various tragedies. We did see the COVID-19 pandemic and how the postponement of school reopening turned out. Right now, we're just at the backdrop or at the precipice of the flood situation, and we've seen what that has turned out, or rather how that has played out, especially in back to school. And tonight, to further involve you as well, we invite your feedback. 22047 is our SMS line. Start with your name, where you're watching us from, followed by your question, comment, or feedback regarding the show. You can also throw in your question to our guests. Talking of which, on this side of the studio, I am delighted to be joined by Simon Manyengo to my immediate right. He is a teacher at State House Primary. Thank you, Simon, for joining us.
Thank you.
Karibu sana. As well as Janet Luo-Yellow. I got that right. She is Sub-County Adult Education Officer of Westlands. Remember, adult education is also a component of the education sector, and we shall be seeking to discuss more on that. As always, I'm not alone. Tonight, Victor Muyakane is also having a panel on the other side. Linda Alela will be joining us in the next episode. But for now, Victor, whom do you have on your end?
Right. Thank you very much, George. Thank you so much, good people, for joining us this evening. Tonight, on my side of the studio, we are joined by three people, three experts, three stakeholders into the education system. We've got Madam Mudeu Kasanga, who's the Director for Education, ICT, Sports and Culture at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Karibu sana. All right. Next to her, we have Dr. David Onunda. He is an education policy and systems expert and consultant. Karibu sana. Thank you for coming. And last but definitely not least, we have Mr. Hesbon Otieno. He's the Deputy Secretary General at the Giant Teachers Union, KNUT. Karibu sir.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
Thank you very much. Over to you, George.
Brilliant. And just to rectify, actually, Simon Manyengo is a teacher at Muslim Primary School in Dagoretti North.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Now, I want to begin with what is happening in your situation. Could you paint a picture of how the situation has been like since yesterday? Yesterday was back to school reopening day. Did students report as you had anticipated?
Okay, thank you very much, brother. First of all, according to the Ministry of Education, what they did after announcing that the school should be open on 13th May, they were contradicting statements, because even parents were panicking because they were not prepared. Almost some students above 15,000 were affected, were unable to report to school. Even others had traveled because the president had announced until further notice. So some parents had not prepared themselves. So according to me, as where I come from, the pupils or the students did not come to school, all of them, as expected. Yeah, around 75% of the students, because they reported at school, because maybe most of them, they are not affected. But when you check around the affected areas, mostly around 99%, the students did not report to school. And as teachers, parents, we are just blaming the government. Some of our leaders failed because of the report they gave after now knowing that the disaster has happened, that is floods. They had to choose a committee whereby after that they were to follow the procedures. As my perspective as teacher, you see they were to come on the ground to assess the damaged infrastructures. After identifying them, then they repair. After repairing the identified infrastructures that have been damaged, after repairing, now they come on the ground also, they tell that now we are ready. Okay? After ensuring that also the sanitation, sanitation, water, everything is just there.
So that the inspection did not happen?
That did not happen. Yeah, they just come on the meeting and they say the school should open on Monday. So you see now we are suffering. Now basically we are really suffering because in that sector, what about the next generation? We think about the generation that we have. Basically, it is CBC. And you see, when things are happening this way, we are going nowhere. We have to sit down with our leaders, and the leaders should also listen to the people on the ground.
Absolutely.
We are suffering. Yes.
And just to bring you up to speed with some news coming in just right now from the Kenya Red Cross, that a landslide has occurred in the Kimende escarpments of Kiambu County. Several people are believed to be trapped, and the Red Cross action team is en route to the scene. Just to recap that again, a landslide has occurred in the Kimende escarpments of Kiambu County. Several people are believed to be trapped, and the Red Cross action team is en route to the scene. Back to you, Mwalimu. So when you look at the effects of the floods that we saw, to what extent was the school infrastructure damaged in terms of classrooms, the playfields? How was it affected?
Okay, thank you again. You can just see that when the classes were being affected, because even the materials, the CBC material were being carried out by the water, the floods. Even the students themselves were displaced. How can you just expect a student to report at school and he has nowhere to go? Then some schools have been now been taken as IDP camps. So if you watch that, you can feel as human beings that we are going nowhere. We are in a ill nation whereby we need to do something.
Okay.
Not that leaders are bad, are good, but they have to be guided.
Okay.
They have to look for the people on the ground, to look for to do the research.
Okay.
After doing the research, they come up with the solution. Yeah.
Brilliant. And we had hoped to have George Sikulu. He is CEO of National Parents Association, Janet. The government, a few weeks before, had said, or rather the alert came past midnight, of the postponement of back to school. Yes. Talk to us about the adult education and how this dynamic change affected that sector.
Thank you. If I may say about back to school,
yes,
about adult education specifically. Remember, adults are the same people who are affected with the floods. They are the parents for the children. So in our adult education, we have had challenges, and we must say that back to school for adults as at now is a very big challenge, because these adults are the same people who are preparing their children back to school, which came abruptly. Some are saying it was said that it will take some time, but shortly it came back. So now children are going to school. Our learners are also supposed to go back to school. But the turnout since yesterday is very low. Some of our learners are still preparing their children back to school. Some of them have been affected by the floods, and they're even planning to come to school when they are settled, of which we don't know when this will happen to them, because most of them are displaced. We are calling them, they are telling us, some of them are telling us they are still up country, they are still preparing their students back to school, their children back to school. So to us, adult education, learners have not reported back to school as expected.
Would you have like percentage of the population that has so far reported and that has not the one that has not reported yet?
I think, if I may say, percentage-wise, maybe 20%.
Is the percentage that has reported?
That has reported.
Okay.
And 80% are still not yet back to our centers. And another issue that may affect back to school for our learners is that some of our centers are hosted in public institutions, and some of the institutions are not conducively, the environment is not conducive for learning as at now. Some of the classes we are using are flooded, so we are waiting that the classes be cleared so that our learners may come back to learning. As at now, like in Nairobi, we are preparing them for a test we call proficiency test, and we've been talking to our instructors. They are telling us the learners, some of them are not yet back to class. So that one will also slow the pace as to which we normally do our proficiency test for our learners who have gone through basic literacy and now are moving to post-literacy level.
How, or rather, what are these adult learners, these parents that you talk about? Are they giving you a preferred time that they would have wanted the back to school to happen, say in another week's time, 2 weeks, a month?
Some of them are saying if the government would have assessed the situation and maybe if they find that the situation is now well, then the opening of the school could go on. But as at now, most of the parents are not able, and even the learners, because we deal with learners, our clients are the same parents, are the same caregivers who take care of children. So the announcement came, and the schools are not ready. They were also not very much prepared. So to them, they were thinking if this could be sorted out first, and then now reopening of learning goes on. To them, it would be a favor. It would be a favor. Yes.
Victor, we've heard of what is happening on this side of the set in terms of the unpreparedness, if you could call it. I wonder what your guests are thinking about this in terms of their expertise and how the government has treated these, or rather the Ministry of Education also has treated the whole reopening of schools, considering what we've heard from this end.
Yes, indeed. And I think I'll extend the question right to them. Gentleman and lady, starting with you. From where you sit, how would you rate the government's response towards the disasters that have been happening, plus the transition or the return back to school in this season?
From my end, we've successfully emerged from one massive global crisis. So now we are here at a localized crisis. And localized in the sense that we had flooding in a lot of our urban areas, especially Nairobi, central Kenya, parts of Machakos County, and we kept getting good information on this. And there were other places where the rain was just near normal or at normal or just slightly elevated. So as we, we had to postpone because definitely in our most populated areas, it was really, really bad. But in some of the areas that have been prone to flooding, they didn't flood. Budalangi, for instance. Scour the news. What happened? A disaster mitigation plan was put in place before, and dikes were built along the river, and we just don't have the perennial problem we have there. So for me, it is a question of perhaps not the Ministry of Education, but we are seeing perhaps failures from other departments that then impact education. The other table, the two speakers have mentioned how schools, public schools predominantly, were being used as rescue centers. I've seen in my own sub-county how in preparedness, when schools were about to open, the community came together and started moving these people to church compounds to allow for schools to open. So there is something that can be done if people come together, but if people just sit back, then people just stay in the schools, yet everybody knows that these schools need to be open because keeping our children at home is also not the solution to the flooding. It will not help the flooding. To keep them at home. Okay. Nairobi County is particularly special. Some of our high-density poorer areas have seen flooding in a way we have never seen, Mathare particularly, and some of parts of Westlands, the higher density parts. And you can tell already, yes, because of how we have settled ourselves as a country, and we are seeing now things like people being removed from flood areas, causing even more displacement. So again, are we solving this problem right now when we're at a crisis level, or do we need first to solve one problem and then prepare where we are moving these people to? They have been there, they have been allowed to settle in these places for years. You know, there's something else that's not
fair enough
specific to education that is then impacting education.
Okay, we can come back to that, and but thank you for highlighting that. Appreciate that. Dr. from where you sit, how would you rate, the response to what's been happening?
Yeah, thank you, Victor. I would probably say that I would not just be rating the Ministry of Education and their response, but government in totality, because when you have a disaster, there's need for you to coordinate. Different departments need to come together, different sectors need to come together and work together so that we as a country can anticipate, prepare, and be able to respond to disasters like this one. I mean, climate change issues are issues that are now very clear, we understand them. So we should be able to respond better and faster than we did, and in a more coordinated way. I've not seen that in this particular response. As Mutheu just said, it's important that kids are in school. Schools are protective, and we cannot continue to have children at home for too long. We learned from COVID-19. We saw a lot of learning losses, and we do not want to have a repeat of that. So we want to get kids in school as soon as it's practical, as soon as possible, but we also want to make sure that we are sending kids into environments that are safe and protective. And I do not see that happening, and no wonder we have so many families not being able to send their kids, because the fundamental issues that affect attendance of school and participation in school have not been well addressed. So I would rate government's performance on this one fairly poorly. We are not having a system that's working for children. We need to improve by bringing on all the stakeholders together to do what we should be doing.
Right. What about you, sir?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to start by saying it's with a lot of sympathy to the families that have been affected by the floods, and it is something that is very unfortunate, and that when the CS Education made a pronouncement to close the schools, the notice was not very timely, considering that it was done at midnight, and most of the parents had released their children to school. Some had already traveled, others were on the way, and others had arrived, and so there was a lot of confusion. But I think, to me, it was an ambush to the CS to take a decision, and might be there was that rush to do it very late when it was supposed to have been done earlier enough so that the parents would not have undergone the cost that they did.
Right.
But that said and done, when His Excellency the President made a pronouncement to prolong the dates for opening, I think that one was timely, because he did it within the time that the parents would understand. And you see, when the schools are closed indefinitely, that is not to say that people should sit back, relax, and enjoy. It means that everybody should be watchful to see how the weather pattern is behaving, how things are changing up, so that people are not, when the schools are opened back, people should not say that they have been ambushed or they have been caught up in a situation that they were not anticipating, because nobody really knows the timing within which things can change. So when the notice was given for the schools to be opened on 13th, I think the notice was adequate enough. And also considering, I had commented some times before that even before the schools were to be closed, we had to assess, because some schools were equally accessible, so that we could not have put a blanket check on all the schools. Some were accessible, but because maybe due to the factors of equity and others feeling that they should not be disadvantaged, a general blanket closure was done. And so this opening, we also expected that when the schools are opened, you cannot expect 100% return to school in any situation, even in the COVID situation, there was nothing like 100%. But we generally look at how many schools are accessible, and when this, children return to school, at what rate will we have? If we have anything above 60% of day one reporting, then we can say that highly the schools are normalizing. Yesterday, I observed that as the schools were opening, some of the students were still traveling back to school. And today, in the morning, even I saw some traveling, being taken back to school. So the prayer should be, because the education calendar has been interfered with, and it is unfortunate that these same students were the ones affected during the times of the COVID-19.
Yeah.
So it is important that we pray that normalcy comes back and all the students are back, so that the education calendar is not affected much more than it had been affected. I was just carried aback when you gave the news flash of what has happened in is it Kijabe or Kimende? Kimende area. That we should pray that this kind of disasters do not happen. And in terms of disaster preparedness, I think now it is time that the government and all machineries, including ministries involved, and even the internal Minister of Internal Security, everybody is alert, so that we don't keep on losing lives, losing property, and also our calendars are not interfered with. I think the phenomena that is happening in Kenya, other countries experience worse, and they have tried to survive within their experiences. So we should also be prepared to ensure that when this kind of occurrences appear, it is not like we have been caught with what the Englishmen say, with our down.
Right. And on that note, I want us to take a short break, a bit of a breather as we digest what has been shared. But when we come back, I think one of the issues that you've raised is something that we do need to address, the issue of equality in terms of access to this education. One of the things we saw is that some people, there's actually a clear disparity between private schools and public schools in some areas in terms of access to this education and even the return to school. We've seen that. We've also seen some big disparities even in terms of gender and so on. We want to delve deeper into that. But all that and so much more after the break. Thank you. If you're joining us right now, this is what we call the People's Court, and on trial tonight is, of course, the subject of education. And of course, with the backdrop of the recent disasters that we've experienced as a country and the response to those disasters. George, just before we went on break, I believe there's a comment that came from somebody on your side.
Yes, absolutely. And just to inform our viewers, our SMS line is 22047 and our X handles at Muyakane at George Maringa _. We did see, a question coming in, and our actually WhatsApp number 0793267279. Paul Makori, I believe, Paul Makori 46 says, kindly ask the Deputy NAT Secretary General to give his clarifications concerning JSS strike.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go. I believe you have your work cut out for you.
Yeah, I will listen.
Would you care to respond to it right now or in the second round?
Let me just give a straight answer to this.
Please do.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, it is not JSS. I want to contract that.
JS.
It is JS.
JS, yes.
Junior school, eh?
Yeah, junior school, yes.
And the teachers are in two categories. There are those who are employed on permanent and pensionable basis, and there are those who are have been employed as interns.
Interns, yes.
And the ones who are on strike are the ones who are employed as interns, simply because there was a court ruling that said that employment on internship is nowhere. It's neither here nor there, and it is not the right way of employment. And this is something that is very factual, that in the TSC Code of Regulation, we only have two levels of employment. We have employment on permanent and pensionable, or employment on contract. And so when the court pronounced itself on the illegality of this employment, then there is a right to correct the procedure so that the employment is either on contractual basis or as permanent and pensionable. So the cry that the interns have is a genuine cry if they have to be engaged. But you see, again, when the court pronounces itself that way, then both sides need to be very careful, because there is no binding then contract between the teacher and the employer, because there is nothing like internship. So if the government wants to engage these teachers, it is important that everybody becomes level-headed and there is a proper sitting down between the teachers and the employer so that we correct this anomaly that was done at the inception of employment of these teachers.
Right.
And that would solve the problem. If the JS teachers go on strike now, there is nothing like recognition agreement that recognizes the strike. Though it is very genuine for them to say that they are aggrieved. But for them to be recognized, there has to be a recognition between the employer and the person going on strike.
Right.
So we are telling the junior secondary, that is the junior school teachers, to let us, the unions, because we have taken the matter. The other day I even talked to some of their leaders.
Are they your members?
Yeah, they are not our members because they are not contributing union dues. And so there is nothing that
There's no protection for them.
On protection, but they are our teachers. Any teacher is a teacher, and what hurts a teacher hurts us. And that is why we have we are having a conversation even now with the employer, the Teacher Service Commission, because this sector, far and large, it is our sector. The success of rolling down education is the success of the ministry, it is the success of the Teacher Service Commission, and it is the success of the teacher. So we are having a conversation to ensure that this matter is settled and the right form of employment is given to these teachers. So I'm urging the teachers to let us, allow us, who are very close and have a binding recognition agreement with the employer, to bring up this conversation. Everybody is watching, even including the government. Everybody is watching, and everybody wants to see the education stability in the education sector. And we are not sleeping on this. We want to ensure that the right things are done. That is the response I want to give.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that response. And I certainly hope, our dear viewer, you've received that. But on top of that, Dr. you have something to say to this.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in the education system, the most important individual really is the teacher. And if you take the teacher and have a motivated teacher that is able to have their immediate needs taken care of, then you have a strong education system in many regards. And the JS is a bridge between, our primary and also the secondary level, which then prepares people for their future in work, whether in pursuit of further education. We need to take the junior school seriously. And by taking it seriously, we've got to address the issue of teachers. You can't have teachers that are not motivated. We've taken it for granted. We saw issues that were coming up. There was no infrastructure for junior school. We were not prepared for it. Why are we messing up with the middle here? And if we don't get it right, then we are messing the education system in Kenya. We're not going to prepare people who are going to take our country forward. So we need to take it seriously, address the issue of teachers that are on internship, and give them permanent and pensionable terms of service so that that sector is also strengthened. Right.
Mudau, do you have something to add to this?
I can only clap.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have a school without teachers. It's just a building. That's not a school. A school is teachers. And it's even better, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd rather have a teacher and no classroom than a classroom and no teacher. There's nothing you're going to do in that classroom. So yeah, let's take care of our teachers. Let's sort this out.
Right.
I think we pay enough taxes to sort this out.
And we're about to pay some more taxes.
Exactly.
Now, there's something interesting that came up in all these discussions, especially online when people were discoursing around this subject. And they said something very interesting. They say, in our country, there's some clear gaps in terms of access to education. They say, somebody actually said, when I was growing up, education was the great equalizer. Right now, that is in doubt. So I do have a question for you, and I would like you to answer it from two different perspectives, from the perspective of teachers and from the perspective of parents. Is education truly, right now in Kenya, the great equalizer? Start with you, Mudau.
We cannot give up on the dream of education being the great equalizer. What else can replace education as an equalizer, as a societal equalizer? We cannot afford it as a country, as a planet, really. And that is why education is guaranteed in our constitution as a right. Earlier, you mentioned the disparities within education. But as we were waiting to come on stage, there was a feature of a private school in a slum that the teachers were complaining they just don't know where to start even in the process of recovery. And that just tells you something. That it is not easy to just draw a line and say public-private. The majority of private schools in Kenya are, unfortunately or fortunately, because it highlights a gap, cater for some of our poorest people. When you just look at Nairobi alone, taking just primary schools, there are about, 210 in Nairobi?
230.
Yeah, 230. They're close to 2,000 private schools. Take a sub-county. Today, the president, was opening Lenana Primary School?
It was yesterday.
Yesterday. In that sub-county, that is probably the third or fourth public school. There are nearly 400 private schools. So it tells you that there's a gap in supply. There's a gap in supply that we as a country must keep working to ensure that we are providing the best way to solve it. Countries have different methods of sorting out. Ours seems to be that we must avail a public institution so that then we can assure, like when we are counting supply of education, typically we just count the public sector. And we tend to ignore and put aside all these people who are very needy and have no other recourse but to set up their own education structures.
That meets their needs and matches their resources. Not meets their
needs. There's no land. There's no what. So you find a school that has 200 students on less than a quarter acre. These parents believe in education and they don't want their kids to go without, but there's nothing else around them. So we have to find the method that includes these people in the education system. We get colored by the middle class and how they take care of their education needs and assume that is generally what is private education.
Actually, on that point, perhaps just before we go back to George on the other side, perhaps we can contribute a little bit on what exactly is that roadmap back to that ideal place of where education is the equalizer. Another member who was commenting online remembered a time when public schools were actually of very good quality, and children of any kind of Kenyan, regardless of background, had access to quality education. They're saying right now that's not the case, Dr. What's the roadmap back to that place of education being that key to success, as we've been all indoctrinated to believe?
Yeah, so basically, I would agree. Education has been, is, and will continue to be the equalizer. We've got to make sure that everybody has got access to education, and not just education, but quality education. And the way to arrive at that is for us to, as a country, map out what we have. There are sections of our community that can access that quality education, whether it's in public schools. They're very good public schools. I remember the times when Olympic Primary School in Kibra was always stopping KCPE exams. And it was a public school, it still is. And we have several other public schools that are still doing well. We've got private schools that are starved of resources, particularly, as Mudeu was saying, in the informal settlement areas of our country, in our cities. Those schools need help from government. How do we make sure that there is a floor below which no school, no student should go? How do we set standards, whether it's infrastructural, whether it's in terms of learning materials, whether it's the quality of teachers that we allow to get into our classrooms? Can we reinforce those? How do we weed out issues of corruption where, a private school can employ anybody pretty much to be able to be teaching students? And remember, parents mean well for their children, and they're going to fight hard. You'll see a parent taking their child to a private school that they can hardly afford, because they're thinking if they take their child to that particular school, they'll be able to transform the life of that child. They'll do whatever it takes. The role of government, and that's why we pay taxes, and that's why we entrusted the responsibility. They should be able to ensure that there's a minimum standard, there's a floor below which no school should fall, no student should fall. And if we do that, if we address issues of inequality, inequity that exists, then we start to provide that roadmap where anybody who persists through the education system can transform their lives. They can make something out of it. And I think it is doable. We have enough resources in this country. We should be able to dedicate adequate resources to provide teaching and learning materials that are adequate. We need to provide quality teachers who are motivated and well remunerated. Then we are starting to get there.
Right. And over to you, Mr. Husband.
My take on this.
And additionally, please comment on the subject of the teacher deficit. It's something somebody has raised to be one of the key stumbling blocks to that.
Yeah, as I come to that, I want to say that there were times when we were growing up and education was a real equalizer, because we saw some of the products, people who underwent education those times, and they came from those backgrounds that were considered as poor, but they made it because the provision of education was affordable and qualitative in terms of where that access was being done. And even now we talk about that set of leaders who are now exiting, but the quality of education that they were given was out of education being an equalizer. But I think there is poor planning that came into being. Every other time there was development in terms of growth of habitation where people stay. Always in the planning, there was the provision for space for schools that was supposed to be developed by the government. But with the time, you find that these spaces that were that were supposed to be left for schools, issues of grabbing came in, and these lands were taken. School space were occupied by other people who were busy taking the land and using them for their own bad reasons. And you found that a big estate will come up with a population that will grow to burst the population of the area, and only with 1 or 2 or 3 public schools. Then come in the investor in education, who comes in to look at the business opportunity that comes in with, if I build a school here, I will get customers, ready customers, because there is inadequacy in terms of what has been provided by the government. So this person is coming to help bridge the gap, but with a cost. And immediately it comes up with a cost, then the issue of education being an equalizer fades away, because you'll find that those who can get access and afford will go get the cost. And where that cost is being paid, that environment has quality. And so people get quality from that environment. They rise up to occupy spaces, the academic spaces, that is higher than those who cannot access the same. So poor planning by the government in terms of development, speed of development, and population burst in many of these areas has caused that. Remember, SDG 4 talks about provision of basic education for everybody, regardless of where they come from. But we have failed to look at that, and so education has now not been an equalizer. Education has been for a certain group of people and not for everybody. That is why you'll find, like you saw the picture we saw of schools in slums, where a school by the river, by what we would refer to as riparian land, a school being built in a riparian land because there is no space that is available for a proper school to be developed. And you can't blame the person who has built that school there, because he wants to provide education to the majority of children who can access it to the nearest point there. But at the same time, that person is an investor. He wants to make some small money out of it.
Right.
So it fails now to be an equalizer.
Right. Now, George, I wonder what you...
On the issue of...
the teacher deficit.
Deficit of
Yes,
teachers.
please.
This has been a disease ever since when the government stopped taking teachers directly from colleges to schools. You remember initially, even when I trained as a teacher, I'm a teacher by profession. When I trained as
You used to get a letter, I think.
Yes. I used to leave
your
college.
posting.
Like personally, I left college with a letter to a school in Nairobi, and I started teaching. In fact, I left college, and in May, 1st of May, 1999, I entered class, already posted. But now teachers are being graduated, and we have, believe you me, we have hundreds of thousands of teachers who have graduated, and they are retiring without seeing a class.
Wow.
And yet still, we have we have shortage of teachers. We have shortage of teachers, and a shortage that has been created because of teachers not being absorbed to go and do what? And teach. So this shortage will continue to be, even as now we are graduating to competency-based curriculum, where junior school requires teachers, and we have a senior school requiring teachers, and those who are left at primary school also requiring teachers. It will still be a big problem. So the government needs to focus on how we can bridge these gaps before this thing boomerangs and it gets out of hand. Already it is out of hand, but it can even be worse. So it is important that the government keeps on thinking, and a lot of resources. They say that the budget, education sector takes the larger chunk of the budget. Yet still, if you want to invest in the development of a country, you must invest in education. You must allocate enough funds in education, whether you like it or not.
Or not.
Yes.
Indeed, indeed.
We have to think creatively around that issue, because the truth of the matter is we've always had a teacher shortage. I remember in the 80s and early 90s, even the government allowing untrained teachers to go into teaching. You know, you finished Form 6 and the first job you ever did in your life was teaching.
Was teaching,
so
yes.
there was a time when we didn't train enough teachers, and then now we have enough teachers, we are not employing enough teachers. Because I remember in the early 80s and 90s, as a private school, you couldn't get a teacher, a trained teacher. So you waited for those interdicted or retired.
And if you did, you were paid expensively.
No, you waited for those who retired or interdicted. Yeah. There were simply no teachers in the market.
Because they were all absorbed.
They were all absorbed. At those years, we never used to train enough. Now we train enough, we don't employ enough. Yes.
clearly there's a bit of creativity, as you say, that needs to...
There's a gap. There's a gap.
Indeed. And we'll come back to that. George, I wonder what your panel says about this.
Victor, I assure you, my guests have been jostling to, chime in and to also contribute into this segment, a spotlight on the state of learning. Remember, I have a teacher from a Muslim primary school in Dagoretti North, as well as Janet Luoyelo, a sub-county adult education officer here in Westlands, Nairobi. Simon, you have been angling to especially respond to some of the issues that have been spoken about, especially on the teacher deficit. Teachers have been affected by the flooding situation. Talk to us about that.
Okay. When we are talking about the floods also, people are concentrating only on the students, and they are forgetting about even the teachers. Teachers have been affected also because, like intern teachers, they are being paid a peanut. Like somebody getting 13,500, that is for primary sector, and intern teacher in GS, you will find that he or she is being paid around 17,000. That's a peanut. So if these teachers are being paid that peanut, and then they go to look for maybe a small house that they can afford to pay, then you found that maybe they look for that house during the conducive environment when there was no rain, isn't it? After now, the rain has come like it is a flood. Everything is being carried out. So is the teacher important or not important? So the teacher is very important in this because he is also, or she is also affected. When teachers are being affected, they are not being even talked about. They are being forgotten because they are opening the school. They expect the same teacher who has been affected to go to school to teach children who have been affected also. The parents who have been carried away by water to prepare the children to school also. So we are suffering. So teachers have also suffered. Despite that they are being paid a small amount of money, they are also suffering because that's why you can see even some of them, because they are being not treated well, they can't have that courage of standing in class. They have to be encouraged so that when they are in class, they do the work as they smile. But if they cannot do that, that means that we are in ill nation. Then in most cases, when I learned about the disaster, I've been hearing about the government allocating certain amount, the budget for this disaster and emergency. But it comes when the disaster is there, this amount is nowhere to be seen. So I don't know where the amount is going. Okay, like for now, they can just come to be cheered by the audience and say, we will pay 10,000 for those who have been affected.
Yes.
But they will not. That's just to be cheered by the audience. When they say, the statement remains there. They don't carry the statement to their pocket, or they don't write down, they just make a statement to make the audience cheer up. It is very bad. It is very annoying. It is very unhealthy. As human beings, so we're supposed to have human heart. When you say something like that, if people have been suffered, before even they open the school, they should have already known where the IDBs will be. These are displaced people. You know, people are crying outside there, and you are just saying that people should go to school. The uniforms, the materials, everything was carried by water. So teachers, their properties have been carried away. They have been affected. Parents, they have been affected. Students, they have been affected.
Okay.
We are crying. Okay, about the teachers, I have heard my colleague talking about it. And in 30 years ago, if I can remember 30 years ago,
yes,
the schools were there, the knowledge was there. But he talked about when you are just completing your college, after training, you are being posted, isn't it?
Yes.
But they continued training, but not absorbing. Then the teachers are many. My observation is, if the government can look for a way of just saying that maybe the trained teachers, we have more than 350,000 trained teachers who are unemployed. Others are in turn, others are not in turn. And especially when we are saying that we have the deficit of teachers, the government is there, they make it politically. They come on the podium and they say, we will employ 100,000 teachers per year. When they are there, they don't. So teachers have been underrated.
Okay.
So we don't, as teachers, we feel it. Because you can't underrate the knowledge and expect the knowledge tomorrow. So we want to tell the government or those in offices, as teachers on the ground, what they're supposed to do. Maybe if there is any way they can stop training the teachers, then they absorb they trained one first.
Trained ones first.
Yes.
Okay.
They trained one first. After there, if they see that now the trained one have been absorbed, all of them, they can now start also training the others.
Okay.
Then on the internship, we talked about it also, concerning on the statements my colleagues have talked about. On intern, although they say that it is 1 year, so they agreed that after 1 year, this person left his or her work. Maybe he was on BOM or doing something or doing any other business and earning a lot of money. But when he heard that the TSC is employing interns, he ran there. After being assigned the job, that is as intern, 1 year is over. This person is suffering. He used to earn around 50,000 plus, but he's earning around 17. And you see, this person is regretting. After this person has sat down and regret, will this person go to class and teach well? Will this person deliver? Because he's thinking about what has happened. What he or she is earning is little compared to what he was earning.
Let me bring in Janet at this point. What are some of the concerns you're seeing, especially in your field of adult education, in terms of even adult education teachers? Are the numbers sufficient? What are some of the challenges that perhaps that sector is going through, that subsector?
Okay, with adult education, first of all, people would ask, what is this adult education? Adult education was inaugurated first in our country in 1979, and it was a presidential directive to help eradicate illiteracy among adults, to make sure that these adults are able to make informed decisions, gain knowledge and skills, so that these adults are empowered. As per the teacher and learner ratio, we could say our instructors, we call them instructors and not teachers. So adult education instructors, we can't say they are so sufficient as such, but adult education is a shared responsibility. So it's done with private and public. And for public, we have 2 categories of instructors. We have full-time instructors, and we also have part-time instructors. So where there is a gap, the part-time instructors take charge, and also the self-help instructors are also involved in delivering adult education to our learners. at different levels. So as per the ratio of teachers, we also have shortage in our instructors. So if we had enough instructors and maybe, for example, initially it was at least one instructor per location. But the same has not been got to, because you can find that maybe in a sub-county, for example, in Westland sub-county, where I'm the sub-county adult education officer, we have 3 full-time instructors. So you find one in maybe Kidogoro, one is in Kidogoro, the other one is in Kangemi. So you can imagine there are some areas that are not covered. But these other areas that are not covered are also taken care of by part-time instructors who do part-time, like 2 hours in a day for 3 days in a week, which is not sufficient for some of our learners. So as a directorate, we also thinking of maybe closing this gap with online learning, digital learning for adult learners, because you see some of our learners do not want maybe to come to class because of maybe stigma and such things, because our learners are those people that did not go to school at the right age. So they are adults, and now when they go to class, some of them would not want to be known that they go to class. So we are introducing online learning so that they can also learn from their comfort of their homes, to enable them gain knowledge and skills and get empowered and at least make an informed decision in their lives. Yes.
Brilliant. And so when you look at the forecast moving forward, do you think that this model that was introduced in 1979, has it gone down in terms of its implementation and efficacy, or are more challenges cropping up and summing up into the entire challenges that seem to be compounding the education sector per se?
If I must say, when adult education started in 1979, our population was not the way it is now. So as the population grows, in fact, I was listening to my colleagues on the other end. They were talking about, we had a pandemic, you remember, COVID. We are now having a calamity that is floods. And out of this, we would get a lot of dropouts, because adult education, we deal with out-of-school youths, dropouts, people who are dropping out of school. So now that most of the schools are flooded, there are those learners who are formal learners who will not go back to school at the right time. So they will end up falling into our category, that is adult education. Meaning, as the population grows, the number of illiterates also grow, and this sector needs a lot of attention so that we can help in eradicating illiteracy. We believe that if a country is literate, then this country's development will be easier, will move easily, because the adults or the human resource will have knowledge on what they are supposed to do, and development will move very fast. So I'm trying to say that as much as adult education was enacted in 1979, as it grows, the numbers are also going up. But the beauty of it is that now we have centers, adult education centers, almost everywhere in the country, and those learners, what they lack is maybe mobilization. Some of them do not know about adult education. One time I was somewhere and somebody was saying, this was Gumbaru na iliisha, something like that. But we are telling them that it is still on, and people should go and learn, especially those who did not manage to go to school at the right time. They should go back to school and learn so that these people are empowered. We have a lot of youths. In fact, we incorporated youths in our centers because they are the most now who need education, even than adults. So we have a lot of them And when we were registering KCP, we could see a lot of them come for KCP. And now KCP is not there, it is CBC. We are also trying to get into how our adults can be incorporated in CBC so that they are not left out. Because we are imagining even with CBC, we'll still have dropouts. Just the same way dropouts were there in 844. So these dropouts will have to come to our centers and be empowered and maybe gain knowledge and skills. We are also thinking about, in adult education, we are talking about functional literacy. As much as they come to learn how to read and write, they should also come out of our classes with a skill that can help them in their daily lives. Yes.
So, someone looking at the strategy or what the government has said, schools need to do the extension of the upcoming holiday to make up for the disruption that was caused by the floods. Do you think that strategy will go in as so far as also trying to also catch up with, say, for your case, 75% of students are the ones who have reported, and a section of teachers are not yet there or have also been affected, to try and bridge the gap? Do you think that such a strategy would be efficient, and perhaps what would you recommend in trying to cure this?
Okay, thank you. What I would like to say is that, you see,
yes,
when the Ministry of Education come on board and announce something, they are contradicting themselves. Because the CS announced that they will adjust the school calendars. But the PS, the next day, he came and said, we will not adjust the school calendars. Already, we are in week 3. So it is a challenging. So we don't know who is who and which is which. They have not sat on the table and agreed or what is happening. So as teachers, it's upon us. We will work as expected, as we are. The syllabus are there. But with this disaster, as it is still raining, I like and tell the teachers, when you see the signs of rain, even if it is one, it is better you release the child to go home.